welcome onto the show. Let me give people a little bit of your background. So Allison is one of these people who, she's one of, I think it's 20 people in the world who completed the Adventure Grand Slam. So she has summited the highest peak on every continent, and then you've skied to the North and South Pole while dragging a sled with all your stuff. Is that pretty close?
That is very close. Well done.
And and I know you've done work at the Air Force Academy as a professor at Duke. Isn't that right? Did I get it wrong?
At West Point.
At West Point. Oh, I'm so
Yeah.
now
Army.
now we
Go
should hang up
Army,
now.
Go Army.
We should hang up now.
No way.
We should hang up now. But I really wanted to make sure that you were here because especially in this time of COVID, in different situations people have going on, everybody feels like the situation they're in is the most dire situation, is the most fraught with peril environment they've ever been in, and perhaps it isn't so. So give us a little bit of perspective on how you look at the world today versus maybe when you're on the side of a mountain.
Right. Well, I agree. Everyone feels like they're climbing a really big mountain right now. And I think figuratively we are, right? 2020, oh my God, COVID, all this stuff going on. So yeah, it feels like a little bit of an uphill battle, but what's really challenging for people right now is we don't know what next year is going to look like. We don't know what next month is going to look like. We don't know what next week is going to look like. We don't really even know what tomorrow is going to look like, but that's okay. We don't have to know what tomorrow is going to look like. We just have to focus on the things we can control today, right? So we are in an extreme environment for sure. And I think one thing that helps me, whether I'm literally in an extreme environment or figuratively feel like I'm climbing a mountain, is just to realize that progress will be defined very differently in this type of environment than in a normal everyday environment, right? So sometimes you have to change direction. Sometimes you have to even go backwards before you can go forward. So people need to realize that when we're trying to achieve goals right now, changing direction, completely going backwards, all of those things are absolutely fine. Progress does not necessarily have to happen in one particular direction. Progress is not always linear. So just realize that changing directions when you're in these environments that are constantly shifting and changing is just a normal part of everyday life these days. So whatever plan you came up with, last year, last month, last week, this morning, your plan's outdated as soon as it's finished. So we have to be able to take action based on the situation at the time, based on what's going on around us, rather than taking action based on a plan that we came up with that is already outdated.
One of the stories that you share so poignantly is this notion of how people climb Everest, and that whole notion of how taking that step backwards and kind of reassessing is not only something that can be done, but actually has to be done. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because it's really applicable right now. So a lot of people assume that when you climb Mount Everest, you climb from base camp to camp 1 to camp 2, you just go higher and higher up the mountain. That's actually not how it works. It's not that straightforward. It's going to take you 10 days of hiking just to get yourself to base camp. Once you get to base camp, you have to spend a few days and nights there to get used to the altitude because it's over 17,000 feet. So once you've been there for a few days, then you pack up your stuff and you move up to camp 1. Spend the night up at camp 1. It's over 20,000 feet. After you spend the night up there, you actually come back down to base camp again. Spend a few nights at base camp again. Climb to camp 1 again and spend the night. Then the next day you climb up to camp 2 and you spend the night up at camp 2. The next day after you spend the night up at camp 2, it's over 21,500 feet. After you spend the night up there, you pack up your stuff and you come back down to base camp again. Spend a few nights at base camp again. Climb to camp 1 again, spend the night. Climb to camp 2 again, spend the night. The next day, you're going to spend maybe 9 or 10 hours fighting your way up there to camp 3. Camp 3 is at almost 24,000 feet above sea level. And the next day, after you spend the night up at camp 3, you pack up your stuff and you come all the way back down to base camp again. And the reason you have to keep coming back down to base camp is because you have to let your body get used to the altitude very slowly. The process is called acclimatization. If someone were to magically drop you off on the summit of Mount Everest, if you could be dropped up there by a plane or a helicopter or something like that, you'd be dead in a matter of minutes from the altitude. So you
Not
have
from
to
the
move.
fear, not from the fear, but from the
No.
altitude, right? Okay,
Yeah.
just making
So
sure.
you have to move up the mountain really slowly, just so your head doesn't, pop off when you get to the very top. But the catch is that whenever you're above about 18,000 feet, which is going to be any camp above base camp,
Okay.
whenever you're above 18,000 feet, your body is starting to deteriorate and your muscles are getting weaker. So it's this crazy catch-22 of wanting to spend time up high to get used to the altitude. But you have to keep coming back down low so you can eat, sleep, hydrate, and regain some strength. So not only is it very physically challenging to be going up and back down again and up higher and back down, but psychologically, it is incredibly frustrating as well because you want to be going this way, but you're spending a heck of a lot of time climbing in this direction. But
And
what you have to remember is that even though you are going backwards, you are still making progress because you're helping your body acclimatize. And for whatever reason, we tend to think that progress has to happen, in this direction, but that's not the case. Sometimes you're going to have to go backwards for a bit in order to get to where you want to be. So these days, with everything going on and all the changes, just realize that backing up does not mean when you go backwards, when you have to start over again, do not look at that as defeat. Do not look at that as losing ground. You look at that as an opportunity to regroup, regain some strength so you're better out of the gates the next time around. And I actually tell people all the time that backing up is not the same as backing down, right? Backing up, not the same as backing down. Remember that one.
I love that. And the one thing I want to correct though is you said, I know that many of you listening think that climbing Everest is just straightforward, and we don't.
Oh.
So we don't think it's straightforward at all. In fact, we think it's pretty miraculous and crazy, especially someone with the medical background that you have.
Oh.
And I mean, if you read your bio, it talks about you've had 3 heart surgeries. You have this disorder that makes it so that your extremities have issues, but only at cold temperatures, like, climbing the tallest peaks or going to the North or South Pole.
Yeah. Yes, that's true. I have overcome some health challenges, but I think that, we can't put limitations on ourselves as far as what we can achieve. Just because you have certain health challenges, it shouldn't preclude you from, going after things that you want to go after. And obviously I was always, under a doctor's care and wouldn't do anything that my doctors thought would be dangerous. But I climbed Everest about 18 months after my second heart surgery. And I actually thought I was completely cured and healed after that. I didn't realize I had another hole in my heart that had gone undiagnosed. So I had one more heart surgery when I was my last one when I was 44, so that was 10 years ago.
Well, and I think the message for people though is that when businesses right now have to regroup, when they have to pivot and think about, okay, my market has changed, my clientele has changed, their needs have changed, it's probably easy to get into a defeatist mindset. It's easy to think to yourself, well, I can't do anything about this, and just kind of sit in a corner. But I got to imagine when you were skiing to the South Pole, when you were skiing in Antarctica, the scenery probably doesn't change much from day to day, does it? I mean, how do you maintain that focus and not get disillusioned along the way?
It doesn't change at all. You see nothing but white, especially when it's cloudy and the sky just kind of blends into the ground and all you see is white everywhere. Most days there's no landmarks at all. You can't look behind you and see how far you've come. You can't look in front of you and see how far you have to go. You can't look and go, oh, look, just to those trees or just to those mountains and we'll be there. There's nothing to show you that. So psychologically, you have to understand that this is going to look the same every day, but you are still making progress when you get out of bed every day and you just realize you put one foot in front of the other. In Antarctica, just one ski in front of the other. You are making progress, even if it doesn't look like progress, and even if it doesn't feel like progress. If you are getting out there every day, and doing what you're supposed to do, you are making progress. Whether it feels like progress, whether it looks like progress, it is progress.
Yeah, and you know what? And I think it's such an important lesson for people. Also, by the way, people who are listening and watching live, if you have questions, just post them in the comments, and to the extent that we can, we will include those and put those in front of Allison to address as well. I know that we did have a couple of questions. One person asked, how does Allison build the mental and emotional strength, not just fitness, for thriving in extreme conditions? So besides physical, mental, and emotional fitness, does she think spiritual strength is required too?
So, such an interesting question. So, I think I'll take the spiritual strength first. I think it depends on the person. It's very different for everyone. I mean, people have different levels of, connection to spirituality. And I think if you're a very spiritual person, then that's going to be very important for you. But if it's not something that you think about or something that is a big part of your life, then it's, obviously going to be less so. For me, when it comes to the preparation, the physical training is one thing. Obviously, the only way to train for a big mountain is to get out to the mountains. You want to simulate exactly what you're going to be doing as closely as possible. So no amount of running, swimming, cycling is going to prepare you to climb Mount Everest. You got to get out to the mountains to prepare. But the psychological part of it for me is just remembering that, first of all, what keeps me going is my team is counting on me. I feel like I owe it to them to get out there and give it my best every day, even when I feel like absolute crap, even when I have a banging altitude headache, when I feel like puking, when I feel sick to my stomach. I just remember this isn't about me. It's about my team. So I'm going to get out there and I'm going to do what I am supposed to do every day. And I do it for my team. The other thing that's so important to remember is that, and this helps with my mental strength as well, because there are days where I really, really struggle. You don't have to be the best, fastest, strongest climber to get to the top of a mountain. You just have to be relentless, absolutely relentless about putting one foot in front of the other. That's how you get to the top of any mountain. It's just one foot in front of the other.
Yeah, and I've heard you speak live when you share this story about how the first time you were looking to make the ascent to Everest, and you were how many yards away?
We were 275 feet from the summit when we turned around in bad weather the first time.
Yeah. I mean, and so, the reason I want people to hear that is because right now there's people who could be struggling in business saying, oh, I can't get there. And the reality is that if you regroup, you can come back in and conquer that task, that mountain,
right,
whatever it is that you're trying to, whatever your goal is, you can still get there.
Yes. Come back to your base camp. Come back to base camp where you can regroup, regain some strength, so you're going to be better out of the gates the next time around. I mean, you always have that base camp to go back to, right? And just remembering, like, you just have to be relentless. You're not going to quit. You just put one foot in front of the other. Everybody can take one more step. When you feel like quitting, realize you can take one more step. You can. And then once you take that step, you can take one more step after that. And then you can take one more step after that. That's all it is. It's just one more step each time. And so when tasks feel big and overwhelming, like, you don't get out of your tent on summit day and think, okay, I got to get to 29,035 feet. That's more than 3,000 vertical feet we have to cover on this summit day, and 5 breaths for every step. Oh my God, how you get out of your tent and you take your headlamp and you shine it on a rock or a boulder that's down the trail, and you just, something that looks like it's not that far away, and you go, you know what? I'm just going to that boulder right now. That's my goal. I'm just going to get to that boulder. And you get to that boulder, and then you get to the next one, and then you get to the next one, and you realize that once you've gotten to the next one and the next one, you just keep going.
And eventually you get to stake your flag at the top of Everest,
right,
and say, "That's right,
yeah,
we got there."
Yeah.
Now, Jim had a question that said, many teams have a member that has a negative attitude. And with COVID-19, it's now more of a defeatist attitude. Is there a solution short of getting the person off the team? Like, I'm sure when you were doing these climbs, there had to be at least one time where, if not you, somebody else on the team was basically had that defeatist attitude and said, we're never going to get there.
Right. So first of all, when you're in a remote extreme environment, which look, I'm thinking Mount Everest, the Arctic Circle, Antarctica, those are remote extreme environments. But right now, all of us here at home, we are in remote extreme environments right now. And when you're in a remote extreme environment, it's very easy for your head to go to a very dark place. Emotions are very much heightened. You have to keep that in mind. So when you're happy, you're really, really happy. When you're down and when you're sad or when you're depressed, that is magnified as well. So first of all, it's so important to be aware of how everybody is feeling on your team. And usually when somebody has a defeatist attitude, there's something going on behind the scenes. Look, people are dealing with more today than they have ever had to deal with in their lives. Granted, right? We have COVID-19. We're worried about our health. We're worried about our jobs. We've got kids at home. Everything is changing. Like our whole world has been turned upside down. So what we have to remember is that more than ever, it's so important to connect with people and check in with them, because people don't always ask for help when they need it. And sometimes a defeatist attitude is nothing more than a cry for help. And you would be surprised at what a few kind words of support can do when it comes to changing the outcome of a situation. A few kind words to somebody who is struggling can change the outcome for a situation, and I would argue could actually even change somebody's life. People need to know, as leaders, right, which we all are, every single person watching this video is in a leadership position, because leadership is not about title or tenure or how many people report to you or how big of a budget you oversee. Leadership's about realizing that we all have a responsibility to help our team achieve a goal, and we also all have a responsibility to be looking out for one another. You can't leave that to, one person or a couple of people. That's everybody's job. And I think that, people want to know that they're valued. They want to know that, people are thinking about them and that are supporting them. And I've had times where I just feel like I couldn't go on anymore. And when somebody came up, behind me and said, come on, you can do this. Like, we're going to walk on this summit ridge together. And yes, it's an 8,000 foot drop on one side and a 10,000 foot drop on the other side, but we're going to do this together and we're going to get there. And just knowing that somebody cared and somebody wanted to see me, achieve this goal really gave me the confidence to keep going and turned a difficult situation around for me. So do not underestimate the power of a few kind words of support, especially when someone has that defeatist attitude. Usually it's something else is going on, right? It could be a cry for help, that they just are having a tough time, that it's a reflection of all these other things going on in their life. So you've got to check in with people. You've got to let people know you care about them, not just as someone that's doing something for them on their in the business world, on their work team, but that you care about them as a person, as an individual. That can make all the difference for people.
Love that. I think it's a great message, and we will leave it there. So thanks so much for sharing your wisdom. Everybody, you can learn everything about Alison Levine at Alison Levine with one L in Allison, AlisonLevine.com. And if you ever have the chance to have her come speak to your organization virtually or in person, you will be one of the most fortunate people on the planet, because I don't know how many times I've seen you speak. It's been a number of times, and I'm on the edge of my seat each and every time, and you always have such great insight to share. So thanks so much for sharing your wisdom with everyone here today. Of course.
Thank you for having me. It's been such a pleasure to be on here with you. Let's do it again soon.
All right, take care.
Okay, bye.